The night was cold and silent in the Blackthorn Pack territory. Thousands of wolves in their human forms stood gathered in the execution grounds, a wide circle of packed earth surrounded by ancient oak trees. Torches burned along the edges, casting flickering shadows on the faces of the crowd. In the center of the circle knelt a young woman named Elena Voss, her wrists bound with silver chains that burned her skin with every small movement. Elena was an Omega, the lowest rank among the wolves, someone the pack often ignored or looked down upon. She had spent her whole life trying to stay unseen, working quietly in the pack kitchens, helping the elders, and avoiding any kind of attention. She had never wanted trouble, yet here she was, kneeling before the entire pack, accused of a crime she did not commit. Above her, on a raised platform, stood Alpha King Damian Ashgrove. He was tall and powerful, with dark hair and eyes that usually held warmth when he looked at his people. Tonight, those eyes were cold, filled with anger and grief. His younger sister, Mia, had been attacked 3 nights earlier, left badly injured after an ambush near the northern border. The pack healer said she was lucky to survive. Ever since, Damian had been consumed with the need to find who was responsible. The evidence against Elena was simple and damning. A torn piece of her scarf had been found near the site of the attack. Witnesses claimed they saw her leaving the northern woods that same night. When guards searched her small room, they found a hidden letter that seemed to describe pack defenses, addressed to a rival territory. Elena had tried to explain. She said someone must have placed the scarf there, that she had gone to the woods only to gather herbs for the healer, and that she had never written any letter to anyone, especially not to enemies of the pack. But her voice was quiet, and no one wanted to listen to an Omega's protests when the king's own sister lay wounded, and the whole pack cried out for justice. What no one in the crowd knew, except for one person, was the truth. Seraphina, Damian's betrothed, had orchestrated the entire plot. She was beautiful and cunning, the daughter of a neighboring pack leader, chosen as Damian's future queen for the sake of an alliance. But Seraphina harbored a secret of her own. Weeks earlier, Mia had discovered Seraphina meeting secretly with a wolf from a rival pack, exchanging words that sounded far more intimate than diplomatic. Fearing that Mia would tell her brother and destroy the engagement, Seraphina decided to silence her before she could speak. She hired someone to attack Mia, and when the plan nearly failed to look convincing enough on its own, she quickly created a scapegoat. Elena, quiet and powerless, was the easiest target. Seraphina planted the scarf, arranged for false witnesses, and forged the letter herself, knowing that no one would question her word as the future queen. Now, as Elena knelt in the cold dirt, waiting for the executioner's blade, Seraphina stood near the platform with her arms crossed, and a small, satisfied smile hidden behind a mask of concern. She had won. Soon Elena would be gone, and no one would ever learn the truth. Damian rose from his seat and walked to the edge of the platform. His voice boomed across the silent crowd. Elena Voss, you stand accused of betraying this pack, of causing harm to my sister, and of aiding our enemies. The evidence against you is clear. As Alpha King, I sentence you to death, to be carried out this night, under the light of the full moon. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some wolves looked uneasy, glancing at each other, but none dared speak against the king's judgment. Justice among the wolves was swift, and mercy was rare when the safety of the pack was at stake. Elena lifted her head slowly. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady as she spoke her final words. I have never betrayed this pack. I have loved it since the day I was born into it, even when it never loved me back. I forgive whoever did this to me, and I only ask that my family be kept safe after I am gone. Damian's jaw tightened at her words, but he did not change his order. He nodded to the executioner, a tall wolf named Garrick, who raised a silver blade high above his head. The crowd fell utterly silent, holding their breath as the blade began its descent. At that exact moment, the sky above the execution grounds split open with a blinding flash of silver light. The torches flickered and died all at once, plunging the crowd into darkness before a soft glow filled the circle, brighter than the moon itself. Everyone gasped and stumbled back, shielding their eyes. One Garrick froze, his blade hanging in the air, unable to move as if some invisible force held his arm still. From the light, a figure began to take shape. She was tall and graceful, dressed in flowing robes that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. Her hair was silver, her eyes a deep, endless blue, and where she stepped, the ground seemed to shimmer with a gentle silver dust. The wolves around the circle dropped to their knees instantly, recognizing her from the old stories passed down through generations. This was Selene, the moon goddess, the ancient protector and creator of all werewolves, who had not walked among her children in over 1,000 years. Damien stumbled back from his platform, his confident authority replaced with stunned disbelief. He too fell to one knee, his head bowed. "Goddess," he whispered, his voice trembling, "why have you come?" Selene's gaze swept across the crowd before settling on Elena, who remained kneeling in the dirt, staring up at the goddess with wide, tear-filled eyes. Selene walked toward her slowly, her steps silent and light. She knelt down in front of Elena and gently placed a hand on her cheek, wiping away a tear with her thumb. "My child," Selene said, her voice like a soft breeze carrying the sound of distant bells, "you have carried a burden far too heavy for far too long, and tonight, that burden ends." She rose and turned to face the crowd, her presence radiating a quiet, unstoppable power. "I have watched this pack for many years, sometimes with pride, sometimes with sorrow. Tonight, I watched as you nearly destroyed one of my most treasured children, condemned by lies and blinded by grief and fear." Damien's head snapped up. "Lies? Goddess, please, if there is truth to be told, I beg you to share it. My sister was harmed. I only sought justice." "Justice," Selene repeated, her tone gentle but firm, "cannot be found through haste and blindness. You judged, before you searched for truth, and truth, my king, has been hiding in plain sight." She turned back to Elena and raised her hand. A soft silver light spread from her palm, wrapping around Elena's body like a warm blanket. The crowd watched in stunned silence, as the light seemed to peel away something invisible, an old, hidden layer that no one had ever known was there. Elena gasped as warmth flooded through her veins, a sensation she had never felt before, like waking up from a long, deep sleep she never knew she had been in. "This child," Selene announced, her voice carrying across the entire circle, "was born lunar blessed, marked by my own hand at birth. She carries a gift rare among your kind, one that draws great strength directly from the moon itself. Long ago, to protect her from those who would seek to steal or destroy such power, a spell was placed upon her, hiding her true nature even from herself. She was raised believing she was an Omega, weak and unworthy, when in truth, she has always been chosen." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Elena's body began to glow faintly, her wolf form shifting beneath her skin, visible even in her human shape, a shimmering outline of silver fur and glowing eyes. It was breathtaking, unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. Even Damien stared in complete awe, his earlier fury replaced entirely with wonder and creeping guilt. "But Goddess," one of the pack elders called out nervously, "if this is true, then who attacked the king's sister? Who is truly responsible?" Selene's eyes turned cold as she looked toward the platform, directly at Seraphina, who had gone pale, slowly backing away toward the edge of the crowd. "The one responsible stands among you, hiding behind a mask of grief she never truly felt." Seraphina's composure shattered. She turned to run, but invisible bonds of silver light wrapped around her ankles and wrists, pulling her back to the center of the circle, forcing her to kneel before the goddess against her will. "No!" Seraphina cried out, her voice cracking with panic. "This is madness. I would never harm Mia. I love this pack." "Silence," Selene said, and the single word carried such weight that Seraphina's mouth snapped shut as if sealed. "I have watched your heart for many nights, daughter of ambition. I saw you meet secretly with a wolf from a rival pack, whispering promises that had nothing to do with alliances. I saw you panic when young Mia discovered your secret. And I saw you plan her silencing rather than risk your engagement and your future crown. When your plan to harm her did not fully succeed in silencing her fears of speaking out, you turned to an innocent girl to bear the blame, planting false evidence with careful, cruel precision." The crowd erupted into shocked whispers. Damien's face went white, then red with a fury far greater than what he had felt toward Elena. He turned to Seraphina, his hands trembling at his sides. "Is this true? Tell me this is not true." Seraphina, seeing no escape from the goddess's truth, finally broke down, sobbing as she confessed everything, just as Selene had described. She had hired someone to injure Mia, hoping to frighten her into silence rather than kill her, but had never anticipated Mia surviving to potentially still speak up. In her desperation to cover her tracks and eliminate suspicion from herself, she had framed Elena, someone she believed no one would ever defend. The pack guards moved forward at Damien's furious signal, taking Seraphina into custody to await judgment, her cries fading as she was led away from the circle. Damien turned back to Elena, his entire body trembling with shame. He walked down from the platform and knelt before her in the dirt, something an Alpha King had never done before any pack member in the history of Blackthorn. "Elena," he said, his voice raw, "I have wronged you in the worst way a leader can wrong his people. I nearly took your life over lies I should have questioned. I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I ask for it anyway." Elena looked at him for a long moment, then glanced up at Selene, who watched with a calm, knowing expression. She thought of her fear only hours earlier, of the coldness of the chains, of the blade that had almost ended everything. Yet she also thought of mercy, of the kind of pack she wanted to help build, not one ruled by revenge, but one guided by truth and second chances. "I forgive you," Elena said softly, "but forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. If I am to stand beside this pack, whether as an Omega or whatever I am now, I ask only for honesty going forward, and protection for those who cannot always protect themselves." Selene smiled, a warm, radiant expression that seemed to light up the entire circle brighter than her own glow. "Wise words, my child. You will make a fine guardian for this pack, chosen not only by blood, but by heart." Turning to address the crowd one final time, Selene raised her voice so that every wolf present could hear clearly. "Let tonight be remembered, not only for the mistake nearly made, but for the lesson learned. Loyalty without wisdom is how kingdoms fall. Judge carefully, seek truth patiently, and never let fear silence the innocent." With those final words, Selene's form began to dissolve into shimmering silver light, rising back toward the moon above, until she vanished completely, leaving behind only a soft glow across the grounds that slowly faded into ordinary moonlight. The crowd remained silent for a long moment before slowly rising to their feet, murmuring in awe of what they had just witnessed. Damien remained kneeling before Elena, his head bowed low. "I renounce my engagement to Seraphina, effective this moment," he announced to the pack, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "And I vow, before all of you, and before the goddess herself, to rebuild the trust I broke tonight, no matter how long it takes." Elena rose slowly to her feet, the silver glow of her wolf form still shimmering faintly beneath her skin. She looked out at the pack that had once ignored her, now watching her with newfound respect and wonder. She did not know exactly what her future held, whether friendship, forgiveness, or something more with the king who had nearly ended her life. But for the first time, she felt something she had never truly felt before in her own home. She felt seen, and as the moon shone brightly above the Blackthorn pack, casting its silver light over the healing grounds, Elena Voss took her first step into a future finally built on truth.